Welcome back. Once again, Governor Hogan is making his mark, this time with a major deregulation and overhauls to contracting. Henry House, can you shed a little insight on what the governor is trying to accomplish?
Well, I think the governor is making an attempt to make the state of Maryland more business friendly, to make the state of Maryland acquisition system more business friendly.
Right.
Because we had departments within the government that had policies and procedures in place that contradicted from one office to another office. You could call the Department of Commerce and they would transfer you to the Department of Transportation only because there's some pieces that are not codified. So what the governor did, I think there's 187 different mandates that he adopted and he put into place from the commission. The commission was formed a couple years ago for a 3-year term, and Lieutenant Governor Boyd Rutherford oversaw it. And they identified, the governor's put it in place, and hopefully this will make Maryland more competitive with our neighboring states and for our local businesses to do business with our government system.
Right. All right. So there's two parts to it from what I understand. The first part is doing business in Maryland, which means that you're just doing business in Maryland, you're subject to certain regulations. And the other part is doing business with the state of Maryland, which is your procurements. With the doing business with Maryland, I believe Governor Hogan's looking to streamline the process and make it more transparent. So, Ron, what are your thoughts on the doing business in Maryland part of the revisions?
I liked what the Lieutenant Governor Boyd Rutherford did, and Blackie Bowen, a local leader in the Republican Party, was selected to be on that committee, identifying specific regulatory problems, contractual problems, that would help us be more friendly in the state of Maryland. And they came up with a lot of different ideas. The point is, how do you get those ideas from there to here? How do we become competitive here to the south, to West Virginia and Virginia? I was over and talked to the Berkeley County Development Authority yesterday to talk about some things with Horizon Goodwill. And look at what they're doing. Look at what Mike Ross and the folks over in Greencastle area and in Pennsylvania are doing. We're getting our clock clean. And we constantly hear the fact that it's the regulations. We have a president now who wants to do away with unnecessary regulations, a governor that wants to do away with unnecessary regulations, a Republican-controlled county commissioners that wants to do away with unnecessary regulations. My point is, what are we waiting on? Why aren't we getting rid of those regulations? If Blackie Bowen was with the lieutenant governor and what they came up with, why hasn't it been implemented now? Why do we need another study or something else to be done when we can do it? And I applaud the governor for what he's attempting to do.
It does require patience, right? Waiting for government to actually come up with solutions. But personally, anytime the government is going to do something that is going to eliminate regulations and help incentivize businesses to start, I am all for that. Right. I don't think it's the government's job to actually create the jobs, but just foster an environment where they can be created by private sector. But it sounds to me like this is certainly a step in the right direction, but I have to agree with you, Ron. I'm kind of sick of waiting, so we'll have to see what happens.
All right. So and then the other half of it, of course, is the doing business with the state of Maryland. Now, of course, there's always going to be, Maryland law that, it has to be an open bid process. But my understanding is that these new regulations, they've streamlined the process a little bit more. They've actually set up a web portal now where you can go in. And previously that was a lot more complex. Now they've actually made it a lot simpler. I believe that's actually more in line with what some of our local governments actually do here in the area as well. So thoughts?
Yeah, within about 500 yards of where we're sitting right now, there's a firm called National Golden Tissue. National Golden Tissue makes tissues, napkins, and toilet paper. And they've tried to do business with the state of Maryland within the prison system. And across the road, when you go out of here, right catty corner, I don't know if you know what catty corner means or not, but Mary, but
okay.
Sorry.
No, it's an old term. That means when you go out, it's diagonally one way. That there is a community depot that sells this product. and they've tried to get their product into the prison system. It's like pulling teeth.
Right.
It's like it's impossible to get somebody to listen to local businesses doing business in the state of Maryland.
And I'm sorry to interrupt, but that's exactly why I think people liked Donald Trump so much. I'm not saying that I do, but I think that it's because they're sick of typical politicians and they want people who actually run businesses or who are successful in the private sector, who understand, who get it. And other people, that were running for president, the president of the United States did not. And I just think it's all the more reason to include more people from the private sector and encourage them to run for office.
Right. So I do federal contracting. Okay. I'm pretty familiar with how the process works for federal side. And I will tell you, the jokes about the government paying $100 per toilet seat, all right, and stuff like that. When you actually take into account a lot of the layers upon layers of contract review and everything has to go on, that $100 per toilet seat probably isn't far off just because of how many employees we have to pay
But
to look at all of those contracts.
Ken, $95 of that's going to some
But
other
$95
activity.
of those do go to someone else.
Yes.
And they just can't
absolutely.
run across the street to the Lowe's and pick up a toilet seat and say, I'm done.
Right.
Per-
So but at the same time, I am very happy to see this streamlining the process because that's going to ultimately save the taxpayers money.
Now, how do you think, this is all policy that he's put in place. Do you think he's going to meet any rebuff when we're down in Annapolis with the two state houses? Do you think they're going to be on board with improving Maryland's business climate?
Well, if they don't,
Yeah.
they're, pretty uneducated
Yeah.
on what people actually want.
The only reason I would see any pushback on that at all would be if these changes result in any cut in some of the contracting positions. That's just my personal thoughts. But
They lost the state house because the former governor and the guy that ran for governor didn't address this type of problem. The same reason the Democrats lost the presidency.
But they
because
still
of things
control.
he didn't
They still
listen to.
control the members of the state house. They lost the governor's house, but they still control the state house, both in
But you
delegates and
have to
Senate.
realize
Right.
what the problem is and address the issue.
and
And they should be smart enough to address the issues.
Yes,
They
I
should
agree
be,
100%, Ron.
but,
I really
yeah.
do. I really think that this is going to be a positive step for Maryland, and I think that it's going to do good things to bring business into Maryland. So, next up on the flip side, we'll take a closer look at Washington County Public Schools and the road ahead for 2017. Stay tuned.